London, October 1909. Britain still runs on steam, horses and warships. The sky means nothing to generals or ministers. Aviation is a rumour from France and America. A daring trick, not a weapon. But at a quiet field outside London, a fragile machine of wood and linen lifts into the air. It shakes, rattles and climbs, and with it rises John Moore-Brabazon, the man who will become Britain's first licensed pilot. Not a soldier yet, not a statesman, simply someone who sees a future others refuse to imagine. On October 30th, 1909, Britain writes Flight Certificate Number 1. Brabazon's name is inked at the top. A quiet moment, no cheers, but history shifts. Britain's relationship with the sky begins here. Early flight is chaos. Engines sputter, wings snap, pilots crash more than they land. But Brabazon flies anyway, driven not by thrill but certainty. France tests flight, America respects it, Britain doubts it, he refuses doubt. To prove faith in flight, and with a touch of eccentric humour, he lifts a pig into the air in December 1909. Newspapers laugh, he smiles. The message is simple. If pigs can fly, so can Britain. Beneath the joke lies strategy. The sky is not entertainment, it is territory. Brabazon talks with men who think like him, one of them a rising political force named Winston Churchill. They agree. The next war will not be won only on land or sea. Nations that control the air will control victory. The world doesn't listen until it breaks. 1914. Europe detonates, trenches carve the earth, machine guns replace cavalry charges, and aircraft, once mocked, become eyes of armies. Brabazon joins the fight, one of Britain's first military aviators. Open cockpit, leather jacket, maps strapped to his legs. No radios, no protection, just wind, instinct, and fragile engines. From above, he sees war differently. Movement, supply lines, enemy trenches stretching like scars. Information becomes survival and airplanes deliver it. The old guard resists change. Many officers still trust horses more than engines. But every successful flight proves Brabazon right. War has moved into the sky. Armies need pilots as much as infantry. The future belongs to nations that innovate, not hesitate. By the war's end, the lesson is undeniable. Machines will replace cavalry. Engines will rewrite strategy. Aviation will define modern power. The aristocrat who once flew a pig becomes the man who helped Britain understand the sky. He is not yet famous, not yet a minister, but his flights have already cracked open a new era. Vision, not rank, pushed Britain upward. Question: when the world laughs at a new idea, is it madness, or the first step into the future? Europe, 1915. The Great War has turned fields into graves and strategy into desperation. Trenches stretch from the North Sea to Switzerland, and generals finally look upward, not for God, but for answers. The sky, once ignored, now decides life and death. John Moore-Brabazon, once an eccentric pioneer flying pigs for fun, now sits inside a warplane. No steel cockpit, no oxygen system, just canvas skin, exposed wires, a shuddering engine, and the freezing wind clawing at his face. He carries not bombs, but intelligence, maps, coordinates, photographs. Information, not firepower, is the new ammunition. He flies reconnaissance for Britain. No radios. If his engine fails, he crashes. If he flies too low, rifle fire rips the wings. Too high, the engine stalls. Every mission is a gamble. And yet the future depends on men like him. Because while artillery destroys armies, aircraft reveal them. From above, Brabazon sees movement commanders on the ground cannot. Supply lines snaking through villages. Trench networks like veins across the earth. Artillery flashes behind forests. What cavalry scouts once struggled to guess, aircraft now witness in minutes. At first, the British command resists the idea that flight could shape strategy. Tradition dies slowly. But Brabazon brings proof. Photographs, drawings, intelligence reports that save battalions. Soon generals who mocked airplanes now demand them. War forces evolution where reason could not. The skies grow crowded. German reconnaissance aircraft appear. Then fighters. Dogfights begin. Men shooting pistols from open cockpits before machine guns sink to propellers. Brabazon witnesses aviation transform from fragile curiosity into lethal necessity. The Royal Flying Corps expands. Pilots become soldiers. The air becomes a front. He survives the war, barely. Many early pilots don't. Some die in flames. Some vanish into clouds. Others simply fall from the sky without explanation. Brabazon sees friends go up and never return, and each time he lands he feels not triumph, but responsibility. He wasn't chasing glory, he was proving a truth few wanted to face. Modern war will belong to the air. By 1918 the world accepts what he knew in 1909. Fleets matter, infantry matters. But air power decides strategy. From reconnaissance to bombing, aviation changes everything. The war ends. Britain buries its dead. And Brabazon steps out of uniform, carrying experience few men in history share. The knowledge that machines have inherited the battlefield. Others go home to peace. He goes home with a mission, to ensure Britain never again hesitates when technology calls. He enters politics, not to sit in comfort, but to shape the future from inside government. Innovation has enemies, budget cuts, tradition, complacency. But Brabazon has already faced worse in the sky. The war taught him a truth that will guide the rest of his life. Victory belongs to nations that prepare before. History forces them to. And in the years ahead, he will watch the world forget that lesson. Just long enough for another storm to rise. Question. If innovation saves lives, why do societies abandon it the moment danger fades? London, 1935. The world is rebuilding, but not resting. Across Europe, flags march, speeches roar, and factories hum with a purpose no one admits, but everyone feels. The Great War was supposed to end all wars. Instead, it became a rehearsal. Germany rearms, Italy invades, Japan rises. Fear returns, quietly at first, then openly. And once again, the sky is becoming a battlefield before anyone calls it war. John Moore-Brabazon now sits not in a cockpit but in Parliament, not because he wants power, but because he fears history repeating. He has seen what hesitation costs. He knows what nations lose when they ignore technology. He watches leaders speak about peace while the world prepares for anything but peace. Aviation has matured. Metal replaces canvas. Engines roar instead of rattle. But Britain remains slow, cautious, convinced that the Royal Navy, not aircraft, still guarantees safety. Brabazon argues otherwise. He warns that air superiority will soon determine victory and survival. He speaks of air fleets, rapid deployment, industrial readiness, pilot training, radar, aircraft carriers. Most listen politely, then return to old plans. Europe drifts toward danger, and Brabazon watches frustration turn into urgency. Then an ally steps forward. Nun staden nor turn. Winston Churchill, once again a believer in new power. Together they push for investment in aircraft and research. They demand that Britain take flight seriously, not as sport or experiment, but as defence. Slowly, painfully, progress comes. The Air Ministry expands. Production lines begin to grow. A new generation of pilots trains under increasing tension. Radar stations rise along the coast. Strange towers many question, but which will soon decide the fate of a nation. By 1939, diplomacy collapses. Germany invades Poland. Britain declares war. The world enters a second nightmare. And now, unlike 1914, aircraft are not observers, they are weapons. Bombers blacken skies. Cities tremble. Civilians become targets. Modern war has arrived fully, brutally, and Moore-Brabazon knows Britain stands on a knife edge. He joins Churchill's wartime government, becoming Minister of Aircraft Production. No longer proving flight, now building the machines that will defend a nation. Factories run day and night. Metal wings leave assembly halls by the thousands. Spitfires and Hurricanes take shape faster than paper can track them. Engineers, mechanics, pilots, assembly workers all race against time. Britain cannot match Germany in numbers. It must beat them in readiness and resolve. The Battle of Britain begins. German bombers cross the Channel like a steel tide. Sirens scream across London. Searchlights claw the night. Civilians hide underground. And above them, the machines Britain once doubted rise to meet the enemy. Every aircraft built matters. Every delay risks a death. Every mistake costs a city. Brabazon understands the stakes better than most. He helped bring flight to Britain, and now that sky is the nation's shield. His job is not glamorous. He visits factories, negotiates steel supplies, solves shortages, pushes workers through fear and fatigue. He knows history will remember the pilots in the sky, not the hands on the tools, men if I die sky. But he also knows victory depends on both. And in September 1940, when Churchill declares, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few," he speaks of the pilots. But the aircraft they flew were born from halls, drafts, sweat, and men like Brabazon insisting Britain look upward long before the bombs fell. When the final German assault falters, when the Luftwaffe turns back, Britain breathes. Not safe, not yet, but unbroken. Air supremacy has saved the nation. The lesson Brabazon learned in 1909 is now written in fire across the skies of Europe. Those who own the air decide the war. Still, his work is not finished. War continues, strategy evolves. And as the world changes again, Moore-Brabazon faces new challenges, not of machines, but of politics and controversy, reminding him that victory in air does not always mean safety on ground. Question: if you build the future for your country, what happens when your country moves on without seeing the cost? London, 1941. Britain stands bruised but unbroken. Bombed streets, shattered windows, ration lines, families waking to smoke instead of dawn. The sky that once symbolised hope now brings fear and defence in equal measure. And inside government rooms, the war shifts from survival to strategy. John Moore-Brabazon, once the first Briton to trust the fragile sky, now oversees the machines that guard it. As Minister of Aircraft Production, he must do what pilots cannot: keep the lifeline alive. Factories push steel faster than sleep allows. Workers hammer through sirens, blackout drills, and grief. Every aircraft rolled out may become the difference between a home standing and a crater in the morning. The pressure is relentless. Brabazon travels from airfields to industrial towns, inspecting wings, engines, assembly lines. He sees engineers working under lanterns, pilots waiting in silence for scrambled orders, mechanics sleeping on concrete between shifts. The war is no longer theory or prophecy. It is metal and sweat, smoke and sacrifice. But leadership in war invites scrutiny. Whispers rise. Critics question production speeds, decisions, funding. Brabazon makes one misstep, an offhand remark recorded and weaponized. If Britain lost, he joked, pigeons would rule the skies again, meant as humour, taken as betrayal. A nation at war has no patience for irony. The controversy forces his resignation. After years pushing Britain toward aviation supremacy, after standing beside Churchill in crucial hours, he steps down quietly. Not disgraced, but removed by a moment in a time when words weigh like bombs. Yet his faith in flight remains unshaken. Even outside office, he continues advising, inspecting, pushing the idea he has defended since 1909. Never fall behind the sky. And while others rise into headlines, he moves back into shadow, replaced not by failure, but by history's fast march. By 1945, the war concludes. Cities mourn, soldiers return, and Britain looks for peace again. Jet engines roar, technology Brabazon once predicted and championed. Radar, long-range bombers, airborne strategy, the concepts he lived for now form the backbone of modern defence. His ideas survived even as his influence faded. The world he imagined, where air power defines nations, has arrived. After the war, he continues public service and innovation. He explores road transport policy, supports engineering education, and even sponsors a prize to encourage new flight technology, the Brabazon Trophy. But the era he helped ignite has outgrown its pioneers. Flight, once a miracle, now becomes infrastructure. History drifts forward, and Moore-Brabazon becomes a quieter figure, not forgotten, but overshadowed by the very world he prepared. He retires, carrying something few men experience, the knowledge that he helped bend the arc of war and technology before most believed it possible. But leadership has a cost. The public remembers victories, loudly, pioneers quietly. And yet, decades later, when historians trace the roots of British aviation, one name always returns to the first page. The man who flew when Britain still doubted flight. John Moore-Brabazon. Pilot, soldier, minister, pioneer. A man whose legacy soared higher than his recognition ever did. Question: if you change the future before anyone sees it, will the world remember you? Or only the world you helped create? England, late 1940s. The war has ended. London rebuilds. The world looks upward, not in fear now, but in ambition. Jet engines roar where propellers once trembled. Airports rise where fields once sat empty. Metal wings cross oceans carrying passengers instead of pilots in wool coats. The age of flight is no longer theory. It is destiny fulfilled. And John Moore-Brabazon watches this new world with quiet satisfaction. To most people, he's an older statesman, a former minister, a footnote in wartime government. Few remember the field in 1909, the fragile aircraft, the trembling wings, the pig in a basket. Few remember the first license, the early crashes, the arguments in smoke-filled rooms where he insisted that the sky would matter. History rarely celebrates those who see the future before it arrives. But aviation remembers. Every takeoff echoes the stubbornness of those first flights. Every squadron chases its lineage to pioneers who risked ridicule to prove machines could rule the air. Every nation that now measures power in aircraft owes a debt to the voices who pushed before the world believed. Moore-Brabazon does not chase fame. He enjoys small experiments, supports engineering, encourages innovation. He funds aviation prizes, promotes flight education, urges Britain never to drift backward into complacency. The same complacency he fought before 2 wars. He knows technology never stands still, and falling behind once nearly cost a nation everything. In 1950, he becomes Baron Brabazon of Tara, a title earned not through conquest, but through vision. The recognition is quiet, dignified, the way pioneers are often honoured, late but not lost. He spends his final years reflecting not on battles or politics, but on flight as a human idea, the refusal to accept limits. When he passes in 1964, newspapers mention the first license, the wartime ministry, the pig story. Amused, respectful, brief. The world moves fast. Nations race toward the space age. Pilots break the sound barrier. Satellites blink in orbit. Computers begin to hum in laboratories. The frontiers he saw in the sky now stretch into space and beyond. And yet, anyone who studies the origins of British aviation inevitably arrives back at the same scene. A quiet airfield, a fragile aircraft, a stubborn young man lifting Britain into the air for the first time. Not because the world believed, but because he did. Today, when people board airliners without fear, when military jets defend the skies in seconds, when drones and satellites guide armies across continents, they stand on the shoulders of early flyers like him. No statue captures the full story. No parade records the doubts he faced. But every generation of aviators inherits his legacy. John Moore-Brabazon proved that flight was not an act of madness, but the beginning of modern power. He did not merely fly before Britain was ready. He made Britain ready to fly. Pioneers are rarely given the world. They build, but the world they build always gives them a place, even if only in its foundation. Final thought. Some people fight the wars in front of them. Others prepare for the wars the world doesn't yet see. Which one truly protects a nation?